The rain came down like daggers, turning the courtyard stones slick with mud and blood from her scraped knees. Elena's fingers clawed at the wet ground as two guards dragged her forward, her servant's dress torn at the shoulder, exposing skin already mottled with bruises. "Please." Her voice cracked through the thunderstorm. "I would never, I didn't." "Silence." The head-maid's shriek cut through the chaos. "You poisoned him. The prince was fine until you brought his evening milk." The crowd of servants and nobles pressed closer, a mob hungry for justice. Someone spat at her feet. Another threw a stone that grazed her temple, warm blood mixing with cold rain on her cheek. Wolfless trash. Cursed creature. She should hang. Elena's eyes searched desperately through the sea of hatred, landing on the tall figure standing beneath the palace archway. Alpha King Darius. His face was carved from granite, jaw set, eyes cold as winter steel. She'd served his household for 3 years, invisible, obedient, grateful just to survive within these walls. Now he looked at her like she was nothing. "Your Majesty," she gasped, "I've served loyally. I would die before harming Prince Callum." "The evidence speaks." His voice was devoid of warmth. "The nightshade was found in your quarters. The bottle bears your fingerprints. I don't know how it got there. Someone planted." "Enough." His roar silenced even the thunder. "You are banished from this territory. If you return, you will be executed. Guards, remove her. Now." The iron gates groaned open. Beyond them lay the forbidden woods, where rogues hunted and winter killed the weak. Being thrown out was a death sentence, just slower than hanging. As they hauled her toward exile, Elena twisted back one last time. Through the palace windows, she could see the nursery where little Callum lay fevered and screaming. The boy she'd secretly sang to sleep when the wet nurses failed. The child whose nightmares vanished when she smoothed his dark curls. "He needs me," she whispered, but the words drowned in rain and disgust. The gates slammed shut behind her with the finality of a coffin lid. If you're already hooked, hit that subscribe button because this story is about to get wild. 6 months of exile had carved Elena down to bone and grit. The abandoned barn 3 miles from packed territory kept the worst of the winter out barely. Molded hay became her bed. Scraps stolen from village trash bins became meals eaten in shadow and shame. But she couldn't stop herself from helping. Old Marta, the baker's widow, had a cough that rattled like death. Elena left herbs on her doorstep at dawn, coltsfoot and thyme wrapped in cloth. The blacksmith's daughter broke her arm. Elena set it in the dead of night, whispering instructions through the window before vanishing. Children with fever. Pregnant women with difficult labors. Injured hunters too proud to see healers. She saved them all, anonymous as a ghost. They called her the Woods Witch now, those who'd glimpsed her pale face in moonlight. Some left food near the forest edge and thanks. Most just crossed themselves and hurried past. Elena didn't care about gratitude. She cared that the medicine worked, that the pain stopped, that people survived. It was all she knew how to do. On the worst nights, when hunger gnawed and cold bit deep, she'd curl beneath her threadbare blanket and remember Callum's laugh. The way his tiny fists grabbed her fingers. How he'd babble Lena, Lena, in that sweet broken way toddlers speak. Was he better now? Had they found the real poisoner? Did he even remember her? The questions hurt worse than the cold. What Elena didn't know, what she couldn't know, sleeping in her forgotten barn, was that 3 miles away, inside the palace, everything was falling apart. Prince Callum had recovered from the poisoning, but something in him had broken. He screamed through every night, inconsolable. 6 different wet nurses had tried. The best healers in the kingdom examined him. Nothing physical was wrong. But the boy wouldn't stop crying. He refused food, rejected comfort, threw violent tantrums that left the nursery destroyed and the staff exhausted. Alpha King Darius had stopped sleeping, dark circles carved beneath his eyes as his heir deteriorated. "He's been like this for months, Your Majesty," the head healer said carefully. "Ever since." "Don't." Darius's voice was sharp. "Don't say her name." But in his private chambers, alone with his guilt, he'd started to wonder. The evidence had been so clear. The nightshade in her room. Her fingerprints on the bottle. The testimony from 3 servants who swore they'd seen her acting suspicious. But Elena's face when he'd pronounced exile, that hadn't been the look of the guilty. That had been betrayal, pure and devastated. And now his son was dying by inches, wasting away from some invisible wound no medicine could heal. Darius stood at the nursery window, watching Callum thrash in his crib, and felt the weight of his crown like a noose. "Sire." Old Nurse Beatrice, who'd served the palace 40 years, appeared at his elbow. Her voice shook. "There's something I must tell you. I should have spoken months ago, but I was frightened." "Speak plainly." "The girl, Elena." Before the banishment, Prince Callum never cried when she was near. Only her. She had a gift with him, a way of calming his spirit that none of us understood. And the night of the poisoning, Beatrice's wrinkled hands twisted together. I saw Lady Cordelia leaving Elena's quarters. She was smiling. The name hit Darius like a fist. Lady Cordelia. Ambitious. Beautiful. Angling to become his queen since his wife's death 2 years prior. "You're certain?" "On my life, your majesty." Darius turned slowly, the pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. Cordelia had access to nightshade through her family's gardens. Cordelia had befriended the servants who testified. Cordelia had been the first to suggest Elena's guilt. And he'd been so blinded by grief and pressure to remarry that he'd seen exactly what she wanted him to see. "Find her," he commanded, voice raw. The search party rode out at dawn, 12 warriors on horseback tearing through the forbidden woods with the king's desperate command burning in their ears. "Find the girl. Bring her back. Alive." But the woods were vast and Elena had learned to hide. It took them 3 days of searching, following whispers and rumors of the woods which, before they found the barn. Captain Marcus dismounted first, his hand raised to signal caution. The structure looked abandoned, half-collapsed, more ruin than shelter. "Anyone living here would be dead by now," one warrior muttered. Then they heard it. Soft singing, barely audible, drifting from inside. Marcus pushed the door open slowly. The interior was dark and freezing, but neat. Dried herbs hung from the rafters in careful bundles. A small fire pit in the corner held cold ashes. And there, wrapped in a blanket so thin it might as well have been cobwebs, sat Elena. She looked up at them with eyes that had forgotten how to hope. "Come to finish it?" Her voice was hoarse from disuse. "Make the exile permanent? The king sent us." Marcus kept his distance, aware of how threatening armed men must seem. "The prince is ill. He's asking for you." Elena's expression didn't change. "The prince is 2 years old. He doesn't ask for anyone. He cries your name. Every night. Lena, Lena. He won't eat. Won't sleep. The healers say he's wasting away." Marcus's voice cracked despite his training. "Please. Whatever happened before, the king knows he was wrong. He's begging you to come back. Begging." Elena tasted the word like poison. "He threw me to the wolves without a trial. Without a single question. I almost died out here a dozen times." She stood slowly, and they could see how thin she'd become, how hunger had hollowed her cheeks. "Let me tell you what begging looks like, Captain. It looks like me, on my knees in the rain, while your king looked through me like I was garbage." "I know." Marcus removed his helmet, and his face was full of shame. "We all know. But a child is dying. Whatever you think of us, of him, Callum is innocent in this." The name broke something in her carefully constructed walls. Callum. Sweet, giggling Callum who used to reach for her through the crib bars. Who called her when he had bad dreams. Who was safest in her arms. "If I come back," Elena said slowly, "and they try to imprison me again, I won't go quietly. I've learned to survive in these woods. I'm not the same girl you exiled. Fair terms." The ride back to the palace took hours. Elena sat rigid on the horse behind Marcus, her body remembering every inch of the path they'd dragged her down 6 months ago. The guards who'd spat at her. The gates that had closed on her life. As they approached, she could see the palace windows blazing with frantic light despite the late hour. Servants rushed through courtyards. The air itself felt wrong, charged with collective panic. They took her through a side entrance to avoid the crowds, but word spread like wildfire anyway. "The cursed girl is back. The poisoner returned." By the time they reached the royal wing, a crowd had formed. Elena walked through them with her chin high, refusing to cower. Some gasped. Others whispered. A few looked ashamed. The head maid who'd accused her went pale as death. They stopped outside the king's private study. Marcus knocked once. Enter. Darius stood by the fireplace, and Elena barely recognized him. The proud Alpha King had aged years in 6 months. His face was haggard, his shoulders bowed beneath invisible weight. When he turned and saw her, something in his expression shattered. Elena. Her name on his lips was a prayer and an apology. Your Majesty. Her voice was ice. I'm told you wanted to see me. The formal distance made him flinch. Before we go to Callum, I need to say. No. She cut him off. You need to do nothing except take me to that child. Whatever you have to say, he comes first. Isn't that what you taught me? The pack comes first. The heir comes first. Your feelings are irrelevant. She threw his own words back at him like knives. Darius nodded once, jaw tight. Follow me. The nursery was chaos. For healers surrounded Callum's crib, trying to hold him still as he thrashed and screamed. His little voice was raw from crying, his face flushed with fever that had no physical cause. The wet nurse in the corner was weeping helplessly. Nothing works, one healer said desperately. We've tried every remedy, every technique. Then Callum's head turned toward the door. His fever-bright eyes locked on Elena, and the screaming stopped. Just stopped. The sudden silence was deafening. Lena. The word was barely a whisper from cracked lips. Lena. Elena's careful control splintered. She crossed the room in 3 strides, pushing past healers and protocol and 6 months of hurt. Her hands were shaking as she reached into the crib. I'm here, little prince. I'm here. Callum's small arms wrapped around her neck with desperate strength. He buried his face against her shoulder and started crying again, but different now. Not the screams of anguish, but the broken sobs of a child who'd lost something precious and finally found it again. Gone, he wept into her neck. Lena gone. Scared. Lena gone. Shoo, sweetheart. I'm not gone anymore. Elena's voice cracked as she held him close, one hand cupping his head, the other rubbing circles on his small back. I'm right here. I've got you. She started humming, low and soft, the lullaby she used to sing. Callum's sobs gradually quieted. His breathing deepened. The tension bled from his little body as sleep, real, peaceful sleep, finally claimed him. The room full of witnesses stood frozen, watching something impossible. Elena settled into the rocking chair beside the crib, Callum still clutched in her arms. She wouldn't let him go. Couldn't. Her own tears fell silently into his dark curls as she rocked him, humming, pouring 6 months of grief and love into the sleeping child. Comment below if you're crying right now, because we're just getting started. Behind her, Darius watched with an expression of such raw anguish that even the hardened healers looked away. Elena didn't leave the nursery for 3 days. She slept in the rocking chair with Callum on her chest, waking at his slightest whimper. She fed him carefully, coaxing spoonfuls of broth past lips that had refused food for weeks. She sang to him, told him stories, let him grip her fingers with fierce desperation while he slept. And slowly, impossibly, he healed. Color returned to his pale cheeks. His fever broke. The screaming stopped completely. By the 3rd day, he was laughing again, that bright toddler giggle that had been silent for half a year. The entire palace breathed easier. Servants whispered in corners. The healers documented everything with shaking hands, unable to explain what they'd witnessed. And Darius stood outside the nursery door for hours at a time, listening to his son's laughter, unable to walk away. On the 4th morning, Elena finally emerged. She'd bathed and changed into clean clothes someone had left for her, but her eyes still carried the weight of everything that had happened. Callum was napping peacefully under Nurse Beatrice's watch, his small hand still reaching toward where Elena had been. Darius was waiting in the hallway. We need to talk, he said quietly. Yes, we do. He led her to the private gardens where they wouldn't be overheard. The morning sun felt too bright, too cheerful for the conversation ahead. They stood on opposite sides of the fountain, the water between them like a physical barrier. I investigated, Darius began, his voice rough. After Beatrice told me what she saw, Lady Cordelia confessed before I could even confront her. She planted the nightshade in your room. She bribed the servants to testify against you. She poisoned Callum herself, knowing the blame would fall on you. Elena's hands clenched into fists. Why? Because she wanted to be queen. And you were, he stopped, struggling with words. You were in the way somehow. She saw how Callum responded to you. How the staff respected you despite your position. She thought if she removed you and then helped save Callum, I would be grateful enough to propose. So she poisoned a child. Elena's voice shook with fury. She nearly killed him to advance her own ambitions. She's been arrested. She'll face trial and execution. Darius took a step closer. But that doesn't fix what I did to you. Elena, I threw you out without investigation. Without hesitation. I looked at you and saw guilt because it was easier than seeing the truth. Which was that I'd failed to protect you. That I'd let someone in my own household plot against an innocent girl. That I was so desperate to appear strong after my wife's death that I became cruel instead. His voice dropped. You begged me to listen. You begged me on your knees in the rain, and I turned my back. I sent you to die in those woods. Yes. Elena's eyes burned. You did. Do you know how many times I almost didn't survive? The first week, I ate tree bark because there was nothing else. I had pneumonia in the second month and no medicine. Rogues tracked me 3 separate times. I lived because I refused to die, not because of any mercy from you. I know. You don't know. Her voice rose, months of suppressed rage finally breaking free. You don't know what it's like to be powerless. To have everyone believe you're worthless, cursed, better off dead. I was loyal to this pack, to your family, to that little boy upstairs, and you discarded me like trash. You're right. Darius's composure cracked. You're absolutely right. There is no apology sufficient for what I did. No way to give you back those 6 months. I was a coward and a fool, and I nearly destroyed everything that mattered because I couldn't see past my own pain. Elena turned away, arms wrapped around herself. Why didn't you investigate? Even criminals get trials. Why was I guilty without question? Because you were easy to blame. The admission came out broken. A servant. Wolfless. No family to defend you. Cordelia knew exactly who to target, someone no one would fight for. And I proved her right. I proved that your life meant so little to me that I'd end it without a second thought. The words hung in the garden air, brutal and true. Callum fought for me, Elena said softly. A 2-year-old child fought harder for me than his own father. He stopped eating, stopped sleeping, made himself sick trying to bring me back. That little boy has more honor than you showed. The blow landed exactly as intended. Darius flinched like she'd struck him. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said finally. I don't deserve it. But I am asking you to stay. Not for me. For Callum. He needs you, Elena. Whatever you are to him, and I'm starting to understand it's something none of us fully comprehend, you're essential to his life. I'll stay for him, Elena agreed. But understand this, your majesty. I am not the grateful servant who cleans up messes and accepts scraps anymore. That girl died in the woods. I decide my terms now. Name them. I want my own quarters in the royal wing, near Callum. I want authority over his care and well-being that no one can override. I want a formal title that protects me from false accusations. And I want Lady Cordelia's execution to be public, so everyone sees what happens to those who harm children for power. Darius nodded slowly. Done. All of it. Anything else? Elena met his eyes directly, letting him see the steel that survival had forged in her. Stay out of my way. You gave up the right to my trust. Don't expect to earn it back. She walked away, leaving the Alpha King standing alone in his garden with the weight of his failures. But as she moved through the palace hallways back toward the nursery, something strange began to happen. Servants stopped and stared, but not with hatred now. With something else. Confusion. Recognition. Fear. Because where Elena walked, the torches along the walls flared brighter. Plants in decorative pots straightened and bloomed. Even the palace dogs followed her at a respectful distance, heads bowed. Old Beatrice saw it first. The way light seemed to bend around the girl. The way the very air felt different in her presence. "Blessed moon," the old nurse whispered, making an ancient sign. "She's not just a servant." She never was. The signs became impossible to ignore. When Elena walked through the palace gardens, flowers turned to follow her path. When she passed the stables, horses whinnied softly and pressed against their stall doors for her touch. Birds landed on windowsills wherever she stood, singing songs that made even hardened warriors stop and listen. The pack members began to notice. Whispers spread like wildfire through the territory. "Did you see how the storm stopped when she entered the throne room? My daughter's fever vanished after the girl looked at her." Just looked at her. "The Omega Wolves won't challenge her. They bare their throats when she passes." In the council chambers, the pack elders gathered in emergency session. Darius sat at the head of the table, exhausted from another sleepless night, while his advisors argued in increasingly frantic tones. "It's not natural," Elder Thomas insisted. "No wolfless human has this kind of power." "She's not human," Elder Margaret interrupted, her ancient eyes sharp. "I've been alive 83 years. I've seen 2 true Lunas in my lifetime. This girl carries the same mark." "Impossible. The Luna bloodline died out 20 years ago when the old Alpha King's family was slaughtered." "Yes." Margaret's voice cut through the protests. "We all remember. The attack that killed the king, his wife, and their infant daughter. Or so we believed." The room went silent. "What are you suggesting?" Darius asked carefully. Margaret stood, leaning heavily on her cane. "I'm suggesting that we were told a child died. But what if she didn't? What if someone saved her, hid her, raised her in secret as a servant to protect her from whoever orchestrated that massacre?" "That's a dangerous accusation, Margaret. Everything about this situation is dangerous." The old woman's voice shook. "A girl appears from nowhere at age 15, asking for work. No family, no pack, no history. We gave her servants' quarters and never questioned it. But think, Darius. What servant calms heirs with a touch? What powerless girl makes alpha wolves submit? She's been living in your household for 3 years, and you never once wondered why Callum bonded to her above his own blood." Darius felt ice spreading through his chest. "How would we prove this?" "The same way we've verified royal bloodlines for centuries. The Moonstone Ritual." The moonstone sat in the vault beneath the palace, our relic from the old times. Legend said it would glow in the presence of true Luna blood. The ancient line descended from the moon goddess herself. It hadn't been used in 2 decades, not since the last verification before the massacre. "If you're wrong," Elder Thomas warned, "we'll have humiliated the girl for nothing. Put her through more trauma." "And if I'm right," Margaret countered, "we've been bowing to the wrong ruler for 20 years. That night, they came for Elena. She was reading to Callum, his head heavy on her shoulder as sleep pulled him under. When the knock came, every instinct screamed danger. She'd learned to trust those instincts in the woods. "The council requests your presence," a guard said formally. "It's urgent." Elena carefully transferred Callum to Beatrice's arms, ignoring the little whimper of protest. "Stay with him. If I'm not back in an hour, take him and run." "Child, promise me." Beatrice nodded, tears in her old eyes. The council chamber was lit by dozens of candles, casting dancing shadows on stone walls. The elders sat in a semicircle, and at the center of the room stood a pedestal holding a stone that seemed to absorb light. The Moonstone. Elena had heard stories, but never seen it. Darius stood to the side, his face unreadable. "Elena," Margaret spoke gently. "We need to ask you some questions. About your past. I've told you everything. I have no pack. No family. I came here alone. And before that? Your earliest memories." Elena's joy tightened. "Why does this matter? Please, just answer." She closed her eyes, letting herself remember things she usually kept buried. "I remember a woman with kind hands. She sang to me, called me her little moon. Then one night, fire and screaming. She wrapped me in cloth and ran. After that," Elena's voice caught. "After that, I remember cold. Hunger. Different people taking care of me. each one for a few months, then passing me to someone else. Like I was a secret they couldn't afford to keep. Did any of them tell you who you were? They told me to forget. To never speak of the before time. To stay hidden, stay quiet, stay alive. Elena opened her eyes, and they were bright with unshed tears. I thought they were ashamed of me. That I was a burden no one wanted. Margaret's weathered face softened. Oh, child. They were protecting you. Come here. Elena approached warily. Margaret took her hand and guided it toward the moonstone. Touch it. That's all. Just touch it. What will happen? The truth. Elena's fingertips brushed the stone's surface. The reaction was instantaneous and overwhelming. The moonstone exploded with silver light, so bright that everyone in the room threw up their hands to shield their eyes. But it wasn't just light. Power rolled off the stone in waves, crashing through the chamber like a tidal force. The candles flared. The windows rattled. The very foundations of the palace seemed to shudder. And on Elena's left wrist, beneath the grime and scars of exile, a mark began to glow. A crescent moon intertwined with a wolf, the exact symbol that marked the royal bloodline. The same mark that was tattooed on Prince Callum's shoulder blade. The same mark that had been on the infant princess who supposedly died 20 years ago. Elena stared at her wrist in horror and recognition. Memories flooded back, not clear pictures but feelings. Safety. Love. A woman's voice singing. My little moon, my precious girl, you are the future of our people. No, she whispered. No, that's not, I'm nobody. I'm just... You're Elena Mooncrest, Margaret said, her voice thick with emotion. Daughter of Alpha King Marcus and Luna Queen Isadora. True heir to the throne. The princess we thought we'd lost. The elders dropped to their knees as one. Darius stood frozen, the color draining from his face as the full weight of what he'd done crashed over him. He hadn't just exiled an innocent servant. He'd exiled the rightful queen. If this reveal has you shook, smash that like button and drop a comment telling us what you think happens next, because this story is about to explode. Elena backed away from the kneeling figures, shaking her head. This is impossible. If I'm royal, why was I living as a servant? Why did no one recognize me? You were 3 months old when you disappeared, Elder Thomas said gently, still kneeling. No one knew what you'd look like grown. And whoever saved you was clever enough to hide you in plain sight. What better place for a lost princess than among the servants of the usurper's household? Usurper? Elena's eyes snapped to Darius. You took the throne? My father did, Darius said hoarsely. After your family died, after we thought your family died, there was chaos. Civil war brewing. My father was the strongest alpha, so the council crowned him to prevent collapse. I inherited 5 years ago when he passed. Elena, I swear, we didn't know. If I'd had any idea. You'd have what? Her voice was cold as winter. Treated me better? Or killed me to secure your claim? The question hung in the air like an executioner's blade. I'd like to believe I'd have done the right thing, Darius said finally. But after what I did to you 6 months ago, I can't ask you to believe that. I can't even believe it myself. Elena looked down at the glowing mark on her wrist, then at the moonstone still blazing with silver light. Everything she'd believed about herself was a lie. The weakness. The worthlessness. The certainty that she deserved nothing. She wasn't cursed. She was the moon's chosen daughter. What happens now? She asked quietly. Margaret rose slowly. He'll be so excited, Darius said softly. He's been asking for his Lena constantly. I'm still his Lena. Elena's voice gentled. Being a princess doesn't change that. He's still the little boy I love. He loves you too. More than Darius stopped, struggling. More than he's ever loved me. I used to be jealous of that. Now I just thank the moon that he had you when I failed him. Elena left the council chambers with her head high, the mark on her wrist still glowing faintly. Behind her, the palace erupted into organized chaos as word spread. The lost princess lives. The true Luna has returned. Everything is about to change. And in the nursery, little Callum stirred in his sleep, dreaming of silver light and the woman who smelled like home. When he woke, she was there, holding him close. Lena, he whispered, still half asleep. You glow. I know, sweetheart. She kissed his forehead. But I'm still me. Always your Lena. That will never change. Promise? I promise. Subscribe for part 2 where Elena takes the throne, faces her family's killers, and discovers that being queen is far more dangerous than anyone warned. Drop a comment if you're Team Elena, and hit that like button if you want to see Darius grovel for 50 more episodes. The coronation is about to be insane.